I am thrilled to be here today with this inspiring group of leaders from pivotal technology companies that are all pushing XR forward. We're going to discuss how virtual is the new normal for both artists and fans. So over the past year, we all know that both music and the XR industries have undergone amazing shifts as the chaos of 2020 changed everything for new and nascent technology. Music and live events has fundamentally switched from being in person to being online, whether that's live streamed or virtual reality. Today, we're going to talk about how that shift has occurred and what will happen when we're go post-pandemic. Will virtual be the new normal? So before we begin, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Amy Lemire, and I'm the managing partner of WXR Fund. We invest in VR, AR, and AI companies that's across all industries with female leadership. I've been in this space for 5 years and have always had a special interest in the music part of immersive tech. I'm an advisor and an angel investor to companies in this space like Tribe, Stageverse, and Overview Arc. And I used to see hundreds of concerts a year. And so clearly this space through the pandemic is even more important to me. I'm going to introduce the panelists now, who are all good friends. Rebecca Barkin is Vice President of Brand and Platform Design at Magic Leap. She and I first met at South by Southwest in 2019, and as part of Magic Leap, she oversaw the production of one of my favorite experiences, Tonandi, which was a collaboration with Sigur Rós. It's still one of my favorite experiences ever. Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started in the music business a long time ago. And music has always been a real passion for me. And throughout my career in music and film and different transitions, I sort of always ended up at companies that were right on the brink of embracing new technology for their next chapter. That happened in music, it happened in film. And then I kind of went to the Bay Area and got even deeper into the tech and eventually ended up at Magic Leap. And one of the things that I focused on early on at Magic Leap was obviously the immersive experiences side of things, like making Tonandi, partnering up with music artists, and then moved to location-based experiences. So did a lot of work with our platform in terms of how it could serve location-based experiences, large, premium. And now I work on, Magic Leap has gone through some changes to shift and focus on enterprise, and I manage the platform design, which is kind of the user experience, the user interface, the interaction model, as well as our brand, which actually there's some really nice synergy there. So I'm super happy to be here. I'm really, really passionate about South by, and I got a great guest to talk with. So
we're really excited about what you guys are building at Magic Leap.
Yes, thank you.
Tony Parisi has been a pillar in the XR space for many, many years, and he's one of the co-creators of VRML. He's currently the head of industry verticals at Unity, and he's one of the first people I met when I started learning about spatial computing. Tony, tell us a little bit more about your XR journey.
Well, let's start with my musical journey. So I've had an instrument in my hand since the age of 3, in one form or another. So that was my first love long before I discovered computer technology, and I've never strayed too far from it. So that's why this panel, being able to be on it with all of you, it means just so much to me. But I have been in immersive tech, as you mentioned, for quite a while now, over 20 years, trying to democratize 3D technology, regardless of whether it was on a flat screen or in some kind of VR headset. And that mission continues at Unity. I've been here about almost 5 years now, and have done a variety of jobs. Then my recent one, my new one, is to take what we're doing with our whole stack and see what we can do to help people market and sell products using 3D. So that includes everything from advertising and augmented reality to VR, selling products in VR. So it might sound a little bit far afield, but I hope we get into this on the panel today. I think it's got a lot of connection points to music and live events. So I hope we can unpack that a little bit, because these are places where people are going to discover things to buy. They're going to build tighter relationships with brands. So, looking forward to getting into it with everyone here.
Absolutely. And finally, Ben and I met for the first time several years ago at South by Southwest. Clearly, amazing connections are made there. He now leads camera and AR engineering team at Instagram. So Ben, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and like Tony, I'm a lifelong musician and actually a software engineer as well, since I can remember myself. I joined Facebook around 2013 to work on groups. And for the past 4 years, I've been leading camera and augmented reality engineering over at Instagram. I have the same conviction that I had when I went early into mobile about AR and its inevitability in many ways. Bringing people together, making sure that they can stay connected, help them connect to new things, to new people they care about, is something I am very passionate about. And doing it at scale has been really, really incredible. Camera and AR for us has been a journey for the books. And in many ways, we're really only getting started. So I'm also very excited to be here with this wonderful crew.
So we're clearly all passionate music people and technologists, maybe even music people first. If we were in person at South by Southwest this year, there's no doubt that we would struggle to divide our time between the technology discussions and the music shows. So I'm really glad, again, to have this opportunity to virtually discuss what we're seeing in the past year in both music and XR. A quick primer for those people that maybe aren't familiar with this space. We're going to use different terms: AR, VR, MR, and XR. XR is kind of an umbrella term for augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. So let's dive in. I was hoping that each of you could give a couple of examples of how music and live events has shifted from being in person to being virtual over the past years. So some of the things that were the most notable to you.
Yeah, I'll start. I think, well, first of all, I mean, I'm a huge live music junkie, and I think that social connection is so important. And I've missed that for sure. But I think that, like, you know, in addition to seeing the work with, you know, Travis Scott and Fortnite and those types of things that have been going on in the last couple of years, I think there were some really interesting things that happened with the wave. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think there's what I was really moved by was, and I know this is a little bit outside of the realm of just virtual concerts, but there was this immediate need, like the you know, no one was ready. The experience economy certainly was not ready for 2020. And so there was this need to kind of pivot, and everybody really wanted to just get in front of people. And so you saw, like, Instagram was a huge one, became like a platform for artists being able to connect and play live for people. And then you saw a lot of these communities like Roblox and certainly Fortnite, you know, start to use their social communities and sort of virtual worlds to be able to welcome artists into that space as well. I think that there's just some really interesting ways that we're starting to try to get at how to make it a little bit more viable, cost efficient on the production side, to try to make these worlds collide and converge. Like, I've seen more effort in the last couple of years to try to make live and virtual event production models start to be more efficient and kind of be one part, you know, be one big project versus each very, you know, bespoke efforts that are very costly.
Absolutely. We'll get into convergence later, because there are definitely several different platforms that are coming together, and we're seeing that repeatedly over the course of the year. Ben, do you want to tell us a little bit about some examples that you've seen of how concerts have shifted from in-person to virtual?
Yeah, and definitely tying to what Rebecca's mentioned, you know, virtual is not just AR and VR. And, you know, we've seen so many canceled shows and social distancing becoming the new norm. And people did just go online and took the platforms like Facebook and Instagram to connect with their communities. One of my favorite things is just seeing public figures being raw, real, and even emotional at times. And in many ways, we're seeing humanity at its finest. There's definitely a significant uptick in usage of Instagram Live and Facebook Live, but some of the examples that I really liked seeing were DJ D Nice, that really blew up on Instagram Live and just recently opened for the 2021 Super Bowl. and Versus, and there are so many other examples. I'm generally very inspired by many artists that are showcasing immense creativity to get through these times that are pretty hard.
Yeah, before we get to Tony, I just want to jump in because another one of my favorite Instagram moments was connecting with the lead singer of a band that I've loved for a decade called Friendly Fires. And what he did, he had the coronavirus early, and then he was quarantined in the UK, and he got on at 7:30 every morning, his time, London time, and just for 30 minutes played records and chatted with whoever showed up. And that happened from March until I think early July, every day. It was fantastic. And I would set my alarm at 11:30 at night in order to participate in that experience, because to your point, this vulnerability, this connection, it is something that would have never happened prior to the pandemic. And again, not virtual reality, but certainly a level of virtual.
Yeah, there was something really interesting too, where like it started to be that when you go on Twitter or any of the social networks, really, you would start to get like alerts of like who's playing live right now that you can join in and participate. And I think that sort of idea that from any place on the planet, like right at this moment, it was a different way of appealing, but it was this idea of like, we're connected by the fact that we're participating in the same thing. You know, there was kind of a serendipity and romance to that, even though it wasn't like a full-on virtual concert that we all went into and had like co-presents or avatars. We were still all together in that sort of taking advantage of that moment.
And music is a connector.
Yeah, let me pick up on this, and it's kind of picking all the threads up a little bit. And we were chatting about this on email yesterday. So 2 days ago, I get a little alert banner on my phone. It's an Instagram alert, and don't get mad at me, Ben Max, but I almost never click on those. For some reason, I clicked on this one, and I jump into an Instagram live, and it's Asid Malik talking to the band members of Palais Royale, this fabulous band of these young, gorgeous glam goth kids. You know, I had never even heard of them before because it's not in my demographic, right? But now I've been listening to all the music last 2 days. And he's doing a live chat with these guys on Instagram, talking about this new experience that they then just launched yesterday morning. So I'm not even sure I would have found out about it for a while. I mean, I'm friends with Asid, but you know, we're all busy. And so I checked this out yesterday. And so if you get the Jadu app, this is an app that has holographic captures of the band performing some of the music. The experience is called The Curse of Calypso. I think I got that right. And it's from their new record, The Bastards. And it's 8 minutes of that music. And it's not only 8 minutes of that music, but you pay to get it. So I think, you know, as we unpack this, there's a lot going on there. And it's not exactly the live concert experience. It was a live chat with the band that then led you to the recorded music experience. But here's the thing. In their chat, the boys were talking with Asid about how it's driving them crazy that they can't tour right now. And that all of these activities taken together are bringing them closer to their fans and giving them a way to get that music out there. And it almost actually makes you think about, what does it really mean for a concert experience anyway in our connected world? Because maybe that's the concert experience or some combo of that. Yeah, we're not all together, so it doesn't quite have that same feel as, you know, I go to some of these shows with you, Amy, and there's nothing like being there live, you know, as it's being performed, agreed. But, you know, in this time we're in right now, it's kind of, it was a pretty good, close, you know, representation of what you could get, because the band was brought into your world with augmented reality on your phone.
Yeah.
And captured. And I think you actually did a panel with Asid about the holographic capture stuff, so we don't have to cover that. But basically, you're seeing video captured 3D people in your house or in, you know, your living room or bedroom or wherever.
The other thing that I think is interesting about Jadu, because they've changed over the course of the year. In the beginning, it was all about people that were dancing, and you could record yourself with a holographic dancer and put it on TikTok and all of that, to now what you described, this 8 minute, and actually it's an interactive experience, right? At some point you get to go in there and play their virtual
little piano. Yeah.
Right. And then they start singing, and you can play the piano while they're singing and they're playing the piano. Like it was super fun and super cool. So I'm really interested in experiences that are pushing those boundaries a little bit.
I totally agree. I want to add that the feeling of, being live and present with friends isn't completely lost with the current platforms we have. There's still a way to go to make live, comparable to real life, essentially. I'm a strong believer that VR is going to make this a lot easier, and we'll probably get to that in a bit.
I mean, we can dive in now.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, we might as well talk about it, right? Because one of the biggest announcements this year was about Wave, kind of moving away. They represented so much of the momentum around these live experiences that were starting to become they were finding sort of these interesting tricks for kind of more efficiency, but still not compromising on the sort of production quality of the event. But even though Quest had its biggest year and Oculus had a great year and VR had a great year in general, the consumer crowd is still not stable enough to bank on for monetization in a way that, I think would have made them say, you know what, it's a no-brainer. Even though Google Poly's shutting down, we got to reinvest in this because the cash is just there was a lot of interest, and they certainly were, I think, were a really great catalyst for exposure into that world and to how many people they got to participate who may have never participated before. But I think it's an interesting question, is that we are still at a point where the model isn't real viable yet for big productions, big artists to be able to sustain that. You've really got to find, this is why I always harp on that connection between live and virtual event production, because we've got to find efficiencies there. So they're not looked at as totally separate ventures that each have totally different development processes and production processes. If you think about the fact that, these venues, when they come back online, they have sensor suites and, they have cameras. And if there are live performances going on, and let's say you can only be at 30% capacity, the economics of that are never going to work, not for live events either. So they have to find a way to bridge that gap. And if you're already capturing the event, maybe you're capturing it in real time is allowing you to translate that performance into particle effects or some virtual being that then can dynamically adapt to different types of AR and VR platforms. And people can opt into it from all different types of platforms, even if they're live. And I think that efficiency will totally change the industry and the production capabilities.
Are you seeing anybody taking advantage of those efficiencies yet?
No, not really. I mean, well, I will say, I think MSG Sphere is a really interesting project. It'll be really interesting to see where they go. But I think I think Disney was maybe starting to play in this space as well, because you already have so much technology. And so if I remember saying to my husband, if I get a notification on my phone right now that said, hey, Mickey and Minnie are performing live right now, would you want to opt in? And I could just click a button and suddenly some, volumetric capture of them performing live. I could opt into that for my kid for some, for $1.99 for entertainment or something. I would do that. We're home all the time. So I think those ideas are there. We've had a lot of inquiries with Magic Leap over the last year about how do we pivot? We need to pivot to virtual. But man, it's the ecosystem isn't mature enough to just stand up and scale and have spatial partitioning just work totally smoothly. And so we got a little ways to go for the infrastructure to actually hold up for it as well.
I'm an engineer, and I'm pretty optimistic about us getting there. Leading to the Quest 2, we saw the pre-orders outpace the pre-orders for the original Quest by more than 5x. There's a lot of momentum there. But I do agree with you that multiple normals can live side by side. I may go to a show locally and the next day go to a show on venues, essentially, that's distant, that I couldn't otherwise attend. And there are definitely opportunities, I think, to make both of those coexist, even within the same show, essentially, the same context. The biggest thing for me, I think, is just really getting this massive virtual crowd of fans, and out of those fans, having some of them be your friends and have that presence. And that's something that really we can get with immersive and kind of full on VR. And it's hard to get that on mobile. It's pretty impossible to get that completely on Zoom.
Wow, there's like 5 threads to pick up
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
Let me roll back a little bit, because I don't want to let the Quest thread fall on the floor, because I think it's important. And we kind of backed into it talking about the wave, and Rebecca, it's kind of an odd timing thing where we had 2 dynamics going on at once.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be sympathetic to the wave as a business.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And there's, hey, they're not getting enough distribution of VR, so they're going to make sure they can support as many distribution venues as possible, flat screens, phones, whatever it is. They've invested in an infrastructure that creates interactive 3D concerts more easily, and multi-person experiences in there. God bless them. Right around the time they made that pivot, though, this is when we're starting to see the Quest sales happen, the pre-orders happen. Yeah. And I think it's important for our audience here to understand that that is looking really promising. Not only Quest pre-orders for the Quest 2 sales so far, and I know you haven't published the numbers, but just the secondary investigations people do in the marketplace about what it must mean, because the content sales are raging in the hundreds of millions of dollars of content, primarily game content, which gets to one of Rebecca's other points, which is it's not clear that people who buy these pieces of hardware are buying them to get sort of random entertainment. They're probably buying them to get games, though. I'd say Beat Saber is probably one of those top games, so there is a music tie-in. So it may be a while before people think of a VR headset like the Quest as the place to go for a live event and get together, Ben Max. But don't we believe that because of the drive from gaming, that is going to open up a pathway where we can now try that at scale in a way we couldn't 1-2 years ago? I think that's incredibly promising.
Yeah, I think it's just that it becomes like it's one more sort of node in the ecosystem, right? Like it's another way to join. And so I think like it's very promising in that respect. But I think if you're developing for VR alone right now, like that's still a really difficult venture. And if that's why I'm saying if the live event production model for concerts, starts to be able to easily translate to VR and adapt for AR, like maybe you just need, planar detection to like lay down an anchor for the concert in the space. And maybe it's not as fully imagined as what you get live with an AR, with an additive headset that then can, really connect to a venue and other people in the venue. But I think it's about this ecosystem, and like, I think we're starting to see, Apple might look at it that way too. This is like one more way for people to participate in their ecosystem of content.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that a little bit too. That was the other big thread, and I know you really want to talk about this convergence stuff, and it is key. There's so many aspects to this. First and foremost, it's that ROI you're talking about, Rebecca, that when you just look at a VR project or just a Magic Leap project, if the content cost is going to be $250,000 to $500,000 for every piece of interactive content, and these are rough numbers, but to do anything professional that's a fully immersive environment, you're looking at real money, not like a little 10, 20K project to build an ad. I mean, that was my bread and butter the last year or so with Unity, but if you want to build larger scale content, you're looking at, for sure, 6 figures and higher. You've got to be able to recoup that investment in multiple ways, number one. Number two, though, the other dynamic I think that's happened in this last year is that this is a technology, anything around immersive and connecting that to live events would have seemed luxurious before the pandemic. Now we're moving into the painkiller phase where the people who are hosting these events, depending on what industry they're in, if they're in Broadway right now, they're going to look at any way they can to get any kind of venue. They're completely shut down to keep their talent fed until we get through this. I mean, they were looking at existential issues right now. And I'm sure it's true at different degrees in some of these other industries. So I believe these companies, IP holders, the artists, they're all gonna look at whatever they can right now to help with the current situation, which then I believe is going to carry forward. Once we eventually, if ever, go back to fully realized, full capacity venues. And that's still looking like it could take a little while. Yeah, exactly. God help us all.
Yep.
So I think there's a dynamic in play that's going to justify bigger investments, but I do think the ROI still needs to add up better than every time you do this, you're looking at a 6-figure one-off project. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. We need to think about techniques, about user interfaces, about experience design, about 360 campaigns, all of that would take much better advantage of the content creation cost.
And that's a really good lead into that convergence topic, right? It's not just music, it's not just entertainment and art, it's retail, it's gaming. And some of those platforms, the gaming platforms, are the ones that are doing these bigger projects in a way that's a little bit more sustainable. Something like the Roblox, I've even been to shows in Minecraft, Fortnite for sure, right? The quotes there, that was back in April and it was 24 million people watched, but he made millions of dollars in merch, is someone reported. So, then there's something like Tomorrowland, which, right, they did 2 virtual concerts or festivals, reusing their platform. So maybe we could talk a little bit about how you guys are seeing the convergence of those different spaces come together, and if you think that might continue over the next year or so.
I think it will for sure. I mean, because like it really is just at the start of people starting to play with different technologies that can help make it a lot easier. But even, there was a big concert that you guys may have heard of that was actually in KSA. It's called Middle Beast, and it was like they drew 500,000 people out in the desert. First time men and women kind of really getting together and dancing and celebrating and listening to music together. It was a huge event. They weren't able to do it because of COVID this year, but what you saw was all these interesting ideas about how to adapt and still continue to grow their communities with like Instagram performances that would like last for 4 hours, that go on Instagram Live, and they'd have a live DJ set and people would be participating and kind of showing their love. We looked at ideas too with, just holistically, and I've heard, I think, Wave did some of this as well, where you're just using the sensor suite on like, how can we use the sensors on the device to just give us enough data to then map some like particle or virtual effects to the artist. So you just make it really, really low friction. Like we could ship a device to them at their house and they could do a set from their house and not be able to broadcast to others. And how does that adapt for your living room or whatever? I think that will continue because, again, I think that convergence is going to be really critical to capture the whole audience. Like no live event isn't going to want to give up all that money to virtual spaces, In virtual events, like I think people are still going to want to go back and enjoy live experiential types of experiences. And so I think like they're going to continue to push on that. There's just some really critical infrastructure pieces that have to be that have to continue to progress in order to do that. Because you're talking about like a single show that's able to adapt and to all different types of platforms, and that's hard. That's like really tough stuff.
The key is to get to retail, right? And some sort of merch and e-commerce. I mean, maybe Tony, you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Well, just generalities at this point, because we're at Unity is we're working with some customers who are starting to dip a toe into this area and doing a lot of strategic thinking about it. But the patterns are clear. You've got 3D technology being used to sell things. Right now, it's in very simplistic ways. It's product detail pages on websites. It is in a feed via a social network. You've got sort of high-end proofs of concept of virtual showroom kind of stuff. At the same time, we're having 3D and immersive technologies power events like this. It is not hard to imagine those things converging very quickly. And the common thread among all of that is real-time 3D graphics, the social layers, the hardware that empowers this stuff. It's almost going to write itself, right? It's pretty obvious that this is going to be a massive opportunity. And I think you just got to imagine that each of the individual pieces will just roll forward, and they're just inevitably going to overlap. and
Yeah,
knock into each other. It's not like, just let me finish the thought for 1 second, Rebecca. It's a little long-winded though. It's not like you have to, for the sake of selling 3D merch inside a live 3D event in some virtual world, cool thing that's primarily entertainment, you also now have to figure out how to get 3D content into that as 3D models of some merch, because you can also put those things in websites or mobile apps. And there's a business case for doing that. So you can make the investment completely independently. You can build those pieces of infrastructure simultaneously for other business needs. And then this infrastructure, these two pieces are going to leverage each other and more, you know, again, the social layers that enable this and other reasons and other drivers for, you know, avatar-based social projects and streaming, you know, services and things like that. Sorry, Rebecca.
No. I'm like, you just got me excited. But the, you know, the concept of the metaverse, right? And like digital twins, like if you have the capability to, if you're building a venue, why wouldn't you create a digital copy of it and allow people to publish into that space? And then you allow, like, there's another layer on top of a live performance where I can, not only can I connect with sort of the master show control and the production of it, but there's like time and space and persistent things that we can do to connect people with additional layers of content in real time. And I think, like, if you have a digital copy of a space, and ultimately there will be, you know, digital copies of everything, on your, you know, to your note too, Amy, with retail, like the concept of a shoppable world, you know, where you can walk down the street and be able to see what someone's wearing and hear a song and it tell you that down the street they're actually playing in 3 days at this venue. And that sort of seamless connection of the things that we love, and the space and the sort of maps that allow them to live persistently and kind of resurface themselves contextually is really exciting. Really, I mean, it's got a lot of issues, but it's also really exciting.
Rethinking merch to me is definitely like an opportunity. It's a big one. It's regardless of the pandemic, even though it you know, it is accelerating. Haim actually, for their new album Women in Music Part 3, did it really beautifully, in my opinion, turning the vinyl cover into an interactive AR experience where you can actually tap and create a virtual soundscape. So if you're a fan, definitely check that out. But you know, this is very much an untapped opportunity for many artists still.
Yeah, I was thinking too, like, if, like, you know, you imagine you're at a concert and somebody is performing and they're able to tie that with a lot of, you know, a lot of artists have other brands that they work with or causes that they associate with, you know, the ability to tie what's going on live with, you know, the debut of a new shoe or, like, you know, a cause that they really care about, and serve that to people through virtual content, like live at that collision of opportunistic with art and space is just really, really cool.
Yeah, there've been some interesting examples of that lately. The Balenciaga, the Burning Man instance, BRCBR in alt space, very interesting. Diplo was there as a hologram. And that's a consistent space that can be visited, and many different events can happen there. So those are the beginnings, I think, of what you're describing, Rebecca, and I can't wait for that future. It's going to be amazing. I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit, though, to see, you know, those are the big experiences and the metaverses that we're talking about, but easier ways maybe for artists to engage in some sort of immersive technology and connect in a virtual way with their fans. And maybe shifting this over to you, Ben, in terms of filters and how artists are using filters these days to connect with fans.
Yeah, I mean, AR provides opportunities for dynamic experiences through those effects. And AI generally has been evolving a lot to enable things that were only theoretically possible not too long ago. Things that required special sensors now only require a small array of cameras. And this allows us to advance many things at once. Capabilities like body tracking, for example, are key in enabling the performative use case that we're seeing becoming increasingly popular with products like Reels. And I think there's a massive opportunity with music around AR and VR, especially when combined with any social element that helps bring people together. On Spark, we made incredible progress since I started working on it. We now have more than 400,000 Spark AR creators from 190 countries that have published over 1.2 million effects on Facebook and Instagram. And we have more than 600 million people that use AR effects across our devices and apps every month. That's over 500 million people. So, you know, I would say to artists, if you haven't tried it yet, make the leap.
One of my favorites was the Mark Ronson piece with King Princess. That was really cool. I'm not sure, Tony and Rebecca, if you saw that, but it was a filter, but then they used it to shoot the video, but then you could use it and then upload your video. So it was kind of this connection of they have the filter, but you also have it, and then they could share it. It was great.
It's a great call. Yeah, Pieces of Us was completely shot vertically on phones. So there was no post-production. It was AR effects effectively. And they released a video. They let people engage with the effects on stories. And then they re-released the user-generated content version of the video. And I think that type of interaction that's so deep and so unique is really, really fascinating. So great mentioning it. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. So clearly the future is virtual. Clearly there's a lot of opportunity, but we also have a lot of work to do, particularly on the technology and the ecosystem side. But we are seeing things like 5G and better processors and depth cameras that will help support that industry. I'd like to explore in our last few minutes just what is it that you guys see might be the future as virtual being the new normal. What is it that you expect will happen, and perhaps what is it that you wish would happen?
I'm gonna jump in and just start with picking up on the 5G.
Yeah.
I tend to look at these things in a really simplistic way, intentionally, most of the time, sometimes accidentally oversimplifying. And for me, 5G is fatter pipes and lower latency, which is going to enable all kinds of 3D content we've not been able to see as well before on mobile devices and with less bandwidth. I believe fast forwarding a few years, we'll have that moment where the immersive content and 5G have co-evolved to be mutually interdependent the way 4G and streaming video did. If you'd asked me 8-9 years ago when everyone was like 4G, yeah, that's gonna be great and everyone's gonna be streaming video live, I would have said yes intellectually, but I would have thought you're pretty crazy. But this is exactly what happened, and we're gonna see the same thing with immersive content and 5G networking. I mean, we know the computers and the mobile handsets are gonna get faster. We know the computer vision's gonna get better. We know, Magic Leaps and all the devices are gonna get cheaper and all that. We know there's gonna be consumer glasses, but the network part of this is going to be fundamental, and it is gonna unlock live interactive 3D experiences that we're just getting a glimpse of right now.
Yeah, multi-user I think is key. And I love that you pointed out that it's all of the different types of immersive technologies. It's not just for virtual reality, but even AR and MR. It will just help work across the board.
Yeah, I think what you'll start to see is even on the artist and sort of on the music side of things, that the conception around an album and its ability to have a story, to be a story that's thought out in terms of how it can translate to multiple mediums will start to be embraced as like kind of a new way of looking at the album, and of looking at an artist's ability to express themselves. I think that like for example, Astroworld, all of the things that happened with that, all the ways that it translated, like if that could be conceived of all at the start, I think you'll start to see people having much more of an open mind about what it actually means to go on tour. Like, what does a concert actually mean? And I also think the sustainability thing is probably going to play a pretty huge role. People trying to be, really environmentally conscious about the effort of these huge venues and sets that they're lugging, all around the country or all around the world sometimes, if you can do that more efficiently with virtual models.
Can I pick up on one little thread of that before we hand it over to Bimax? I've been reading David Byrne's book, How Music Works. This is a great book, big recommend. And he kind of reminds us that, you know, we all in our cohort, we all grew up where music was a thing. It was a record or a CD you bought. I mean, there was, right? I mean, but there was a lot of time in the history of music before that was true. Until it was capturable as an audio recording, the only thing you had was the sheet music, which really wasn't the performance. That was just the notated version of what you could get on a piano or a violin. So then you became this, we became this medium where you had a thing, and that's sort of gone away. Maybe with virtual technology and virtual goods, we could get back to a place where there is some, again, thing, some uniqueness, something we can actually possess that's more like a virtual good this time. And that just, I don't know, I'm super excited about that idea. Just totally inspired by what you just said, Rebecca.
A story. I think the albums used to have stories. There was like a lot around.
The story, the art on the cover. Oh, yeah,
the
totally.
liner notes. I mean,
notes.
we moved to like streaming, and it became a singles kind of culture that was somewhat faceless. And so I think this could be a really interesting opportunity to bring that back.
Yes, singles and a like default to shuffle. I'm old school in the sense that I go back to albums and I press the first track. I turn off shuffle every single time.
I never hit shuffle, man.
So that I can
I
listen.
do not understand shuffle. Like, why do people like shuffle?
Okay, there's consensus here. I like that. And there's definitely consensus on 5G being key in delivering high fidelity experience, especially on the go. I don't want to forget though that for many we need to get solid connectivity first too. I am very bullish just seeing those technologies year over year getting so significantly better, cameras getting better, and then what we make of them, I think is really interesting. And Tony kind of alluded to that, talking about what we do with AI. So models will get faster, we'll process them faster, and it's going to be key in enabling what we call taking virtual content to the next level.
The other reason that I think virtual will be the new normal is that the reach is global, right, with virtual. And so that 16-year-old girl in Enid, Oklahoma that can't get to the Primavera Festival in Barcelona, or to be honest, the woman in San Francisco that can't get there, right? Like the artists will be able to reach so many more people, and I think have discovered that they can using virtual technologies. So I think that's another reason that virtual is here to stay. I want to thank all of you for joining me in this discussion. It was very fun. It is a pleasure to see every one of you, even virtually, although I do wish we could see a show later tonight. That would be just some themes for the audience. There are many types of virtual content, from streaming to virtual reality, and these are evolving. So definitely try to explore all of those that are coming out. We are seeing growth in particularly things like the filters and the new headsets, but there is scale that is needed to make it more efficient and more effective. And I think we all agree that virtual won't go away even post-pandemic. So I hope those of you in the audience get a chance to check out some of the experiences that we referenced today, and I hope that you're inspired to make your own. Take care, everyone.